Hello, I'm Amanda Moore. I'm the Director of the Clearinghouse Community. Welcome to our Shriver Hangout for July 2016. This is our monthly conversation with advocates advancing change. And both the Hangout and the Clearinghouse Community are brought to you by the Sargent Shriver National Center on Poverty Law, a national leader in advancing justice and opportunity. Today, I'm happy to have with me Amy Petkovsek. She's the Director of Advocacy for Training and Pro Bono at Maryland Legal Aid. She is normally based in Baltimore, but is joining us today from upstate New York. So, hi, Amy. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, good afternoon.
Amy's the author of our current advocacy story on the Clearinghouse Community. That's called A Fresh Approach to Community Lawyering, A Lawyer in the Library. And that's what we're going to talk about today. That's Maryland Legal Aid's new Lawyer in the Library program. You can read in more detail about the program in her advocacy story, and you can find that the URL listed here on your screen, povertylaw.org/clearinghouse. We would like for you to be part of this conversation today. We want to hear your questions. If you have experience with a program like this, let us know. There are a couple ways that you can send us those questions. I know people are watching us in different ways. If you're watching through Google and you're on a laptop, you can go ahead and, or some sort of desktop device, not a mobile, you can hover your mouse over the left side of your screen and you'll see a row of icons pop up. One of those is blue and it says Q&A. If you click that, a chat box will open up down the right side of your screen. And you can send us your questions or comments that way. Don't worry, you won't appear on screen. We won't see you or hear you, but we will be able to take your questions. If you want to go ahead and give it a try, feel free. You can send us your name and where you're watching. We'd love to hear from you. Now, I know some of you are watching the live stream through the Shriver Center's YouTube channel. We want to hear from you too. You can send me an email with your questions or comments, and my email address is on the screen. It's Amanda Moore, M-O-O-R-E, at povertylaw.org. So we go ahead and send me those emails. We really look forward to hearing from you. I want to go ahead and get started talking with Amy about the Lawyer in the Library program today, though. We'll just start off, Amy, if you could just tell us briefly what the program is, and then we could get more into how it started, how it can be replicated, that sort of thing. But just sort of give us an overview of what the Lawyer in the Library program is.
Sure. The Lawyer in the Library program is a partnership between Maryland Legal Aid and the Enoch Pratt Free Library system. The library location that we're mainly located at is in West Baltimore. And what it looks like is once a week, every Tuesday afternoon and one Saturday a month, a group of attorneys from Maryland Legal Aid, law students, paralegals, and sometimes pro bono volunteers come in, about 5 to 10 people at any given day, bring in mobile printers, laptops, and set up an office inside the library where we can do intake, give clients brief advice, and do some full expungement work.
That's great. So I want to talk more about how all that works. But first, I want to talk about the origins of this program. I think it's particularly interesting given our current national discussion and ongoing very live issues. The program had its genesis in the civil unrest that followed Freddie Gray's death in police custody last year in Baltimore. Tell us about how that led to having a Lawyer in the Library program.
Absolutely. It was the direct connection that led to it for Maryland Legal Aid. You know, in those days last spring in Baltimore, we were all watching the news and the unrest that was happening in our city and hearing the cries for help, especially in neighborhoods like in West Baltimore where Freddie Gray lived. And our chief operating officer, Gustavo Thaler, was watching that and saw a news coverage of Mulaney Townsend Diggs, who still is the managing director of the Enoch Pratt Free Library branch in West Baltimore, right across from the CVS pharmacy that was on every national news channel burning down. The library sits right across the street from that. And while that CVS was burning down and the neighborhood was in chaos, Ms. Towler from Legal Aid saw Ms. Townsend Diggs on TV say, "My library is staying open. We're safe haven for the community. We are a place where people trust, and we're going to stay open through all of this," when everything else in the city really was shutting down. And that was the genesis of the idea to, you know what, libraries are places where people go for help. It's a place they trust. So why wouldn't Maryland Legal Aid, who is here to help the community, partner with the library and become a part of that, to be in that branch. And so the Equal Justice Council, the fundraising arm of Maryland Legal Aid, has some members, Mr. Rosenberg especially, who are active with the library. We were able to make some connections that way, and very quickly, within a month after the initial unrest, we're able to start meetings and have someone in the library by midsummer last year, and we've been there every week since then.
That's a great story for something you're really positive and hopefully lasting to come out of that. So tell us a little bit more about how it works exactly, as far as how you advertise, how you get word out to the community that you're there. How much staff? Is it all legal aid staff? Is it pro bono attorneys? What do you take? What do you do with the cases that come in? Just tell us more a little bit about the mechanics of it.
Sure, absolutely. The mechanics start with a red cart. It's really the most essential part because it is huge and it has wheels, and we need it to fill it with file folders. We've gotten our IT department in Maryland Legal Aid has been instrumental in making this a success, and they have discovered some mobile printers, some Epson printers that work amazing. So we load the cart up with 3 printers, with 3 laptops, paper, ink, all the supplies we might need, electrical cords, MiFi connections. And then we bring it over. We have at least 2 legal aid non-lawyer staff, paralegals. When we get to the library, one person stands at the front door of the library with the security guard. From the beginning, this has been not just a program the library offers, but a partnership. And when you walk into the door of the library, the security guard says, "Good afternoon, welcome." And right next to him stands our paralegal saying, "Hi, there's a lawyer here today. Is there anything you could need an attorney for?" So, and then that person is able to, and some people just come to the library, but when they walk in that front door and our paralegal says, "Would you like to see a lawyer?" Then she will, if yes, she will guide them back to our room in the back. In the back room is where we set up all of that equipment. We have on any given day 5 legal aid staff. We also may have 1 or 2 pro bono attorneys and some law students. During the school year, we had 88 law students volunteer with the program. We had 2 or 3 on any given day. Unfortunately, we have a lot of clients come in that location who are not fully literate. And so law students are able to be really helpful in reading forms to folks and helping them complete our intake documents. We do full intake on site. We're able to virtually connect. So the paralegal or staff doing intake is able to connect just as if they would at a desktop intake in our main legal aid office downtown. So we do a full intake there. And then we have different areas of the room where you can speak with an attorney about family law, landlord-tenant law, consumer. We see a lot of consumer scams that people in the neighborhood may be being preyed upon and just have a question. They got something in the mail and want help with it. And then a lot of what we do there is criminal record expungement. The laws changed on record expungement in Maryland in October of 2015, allowing a number of things to be expunged that were not previously able to be expunged. And we've seen a tremendous increase of clients who are able to have immediate access to jobs and to housing and to have their second chance because of that. And we were able to do the expungement case from start to finish in the library in 1 day. So we print it out, they sign it, we go ahead and file it. And then we remain in contact with them to let them know when it's completed. But the only time they need to see us is in their neighborhood down the street in the library.
That's fantastic. How do you train the volunteers? Do people go through sort of, if they want to work on the Lawyer in the Library program, do they go through some sort of periodic training about this? How do you manage the volunteers?
Absolutely. So we definitely manage the volunteers. The law students and the attorney volunteers, pro bono volunteers, have separate trainings. I go to both of the law schools each semester, and I do a presentation for the students, a PowerPoint, and explain to them, an introduction to poverty law, to working with low-income clients, what they might see, and what their role in the library would be, because the law students are not giving any advice. They're helping with more of the logistical mechanics of the clinics. And then we do a separate training for the pro bono attorneys. They mostly assist with expungement, and we do a very clear training on how they're able to assist with that. But we have some pro bonos that are already well-versed in family law and may want to sit down and offer advice to victims of domestic violence for 2 hours. We have more pro bono volunteers on Saturdays. We see an average in 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon. We see an average of 20 clients. On a Saturday, we see an average of 40 to 50 clients. And some Saturdays we've had up to 600 people show up. And the most we've been able to see in a Saturday afternoon is 150 people. So we've had to develop a waiting list and appointment system because we sort of became very popular in this neighborhood as the months went on since last summer.
Well, that's what I wondered what you would do if you have more people there than you have the capacity to handle. So do they make appointments for the next time you're back in the library, or do you make appointments for a legal aid office visit?
So we give them the option, and 99% of the time they choose the next time that we're back in the library.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a list, and my paralegal keeps a great schedule of every time we'll be in the library, which Saturdays, which Tuesdays, and we're able to say, we're going to be right back here next week. You can wait 2 hours today, or we can see you at 2:20 next Tuesday. And almost always they say, oh, I live right down the street. I'll come back next Tuesday at 2:20. So we see them, they prefer to be seen right there in their neighborhood. That's what's easiest. If they have a landlord-tenant case and they say, my landlord sent me this thing and I want to show it to you, we can say, well, you can bring it back next Tuesday at 1, bring us that form back and we'll see what the landlord sent. So it's a great, we see a lot of clients coming back again with different issues because they know legal aid's there.
Right, and I want to get to that in a minute about sort of what the relationship over time has been, but we had a question come in from Greg. It's a good question. How is the project funded, or how were caseloads adjusted to allow staff time for this sort of outreach work that you're doing?
That's a great question. When the unrest first happened in Baltimore, Maryland legal aid staff really wanted to respond, everything from executive staff down to our attorneys and paralegals, and everyone wanted to do something to help. And so when this program, when the genesis started, when it happened, people were willing to readjust their time, their schedules, so that they could come and be in the library. Caseloads may not have been adjusted per se because one housing attorney may only need to come once every 45 days. Maryland Legal Aid in our Baltimore City office has housing and consumer, administrative law, domestic law units, and those attorneys rotate. So it's not the same attorney every week. And thankfully, we've been able, as the program has grown, to supplement with pro bono attorneys. Coming up in August and September, we have law firms and legal corporate counsel departments at some major corporations that are giving us one whole day. So they will, for example, one law firm will take a Tuesday. So that's going to relieve our staff so they can go back to their caseload and not have to supplement it so much. Also, Maryland Legal Aid is very generously funded by members of our Equal Justice Council, by the legal community in Maryland, and we've made some grant applications as well to put funding together. We've been able to bring on 2 full-time staff attorneys for this project. So they started about a month ago, and they'll be working to expand the work that we've done in the library throughout Baltimore City and throughout the state of Maryland, to spend a lot of time recruiting more law firms, more pro bono attorneys to do the groundwork. And with that, hopefully comes an increase in funds that come in as well.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Greg. We've had another question come in from Catherine. She wants to know if you have clients sign a release or a limited advice legal assistance agreement before you give any advice when people are in the library.
We absolutely do. That's one of the things I was mentioning that the law students help read. We don't want to just have someone come to our door and say, here, sign this paper, and then we can help you. We really want them to understand the limited, this advice will be given to you today. It doesn't necessarily create a continuing attorney-client relationship. If it did, you would sign a further retainer. And so we have often our law students or paralegals will step to the side with someone and go through that form line by line before they sign it. And we keep records of those from every day that we're in the library.
So you've hinted some things you've said, the growing demand, you mentioned 600 people on one Saturday. Over time, I wanted to ask what the response has been. It sounds like it's been positive and maybe increasing, especially if you're looking to expand. So that sounds like that may be the response from the community. What's the response been from the library, from it sounds like also really most of the legal aid program itself has really embraced this project. But what has been the response in general to this?
It's been extremely positive in general. Speaking first to the library, librarians are great partners, and wow, if I didn't know it before from when I had a library card as a kid, I know it now for sure, because they're helpers in the world. They are resources, and for a legal aid group to partner with a library, especially a great system such as Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore, has just been absolutely tremendous. They've not been someone to just say, well, hang your flyer by the front door. They're a true partner. We've had challenges. 600 people in one library is too many people for one library in one day, but we worked through that, and they've been tremendously supportive and really made us a true hand-in-hand partner throughout the project, and use their strengths, their ability to already have that trust of the community, to provide a place where people can come to and rely upon, and build that with our legal knowledge. And it's been a big success. Clients, in terms of advertising, we have flyers and we use social media, but when we really saw the uptick was when word of mouth spread throughout the community. And we ask before they fill out that waiver, we say, how did you hear about us today? And if they didn't just walk in, they heard about us from someone else in their neighborhood or a family member, or my mom was down here and so my two brothers are here now. And we hear that all the time. The couple times that we had huge turnouts, someone put it on a neighborhood Facebook page. They just copied and pasted parts of the flyer, and word spread that way, because people in the community are saying, we've had success. We like these lawyers. They give us good information. We can trust them. They're getting my expungement done. It's quick. You should go down there. And that has not slowed down.
I was glad to hear your love for the librarians. My husband's an academic librarian, so I have nothing but love for the librarians. And I know we have a few joining us today, so I want to welcome you. I'm glad they weren't put off by the fact of, joining a group of lawyers, even virtually. So welcome, librarians. We had another question come in from Giovanna. She wants to know how you handle conflict checks.
So after we do that initial waiver, the clients go into a waiting area, and then they meet privately in the back of the room with one of our legal aid paralegals. It's one of the only jobs that at the Lawyer in the Library we don't give to a volunteer. It's someone who's trained from legal aid. And that person is able to do a full intake, during which we do a conflict check. And during that conflict, if they pull up something that seems to be a conflict, they will call me over, or the other supervisor who would be there in my place that day, and we'll review the situation. We have a great agreement with some other partners in our state delivery of legal services system, such as Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service, and we have those cards on site. So the same as we would in our downtown office, we try and find them another source, that source that can help them, and I'll explain the conflict situation.
Great. We're having a lot of questions coming in. Here's one from Adelaide. She asks, which do you think is better? A law library or a branch library? She says, here in LA, we have an amazing law library, which would seem like the obvious choice, but I think going into the communities may be more important. What do you think?
I'm grateful for that question, because it lets me talk about something I wanted to, and certainly law libraries are great. But we've really seen tremendous success in a branch library. And a lot of it comes from the branch libraries are part of the communities. They get a lot of foot traffic. People walk in and will say, would you like to see a lawyer? And they might say, I don't think I need to, but I can never see my kids for the holidays, and they have a custody issue, they didn't realize it, or a consumer financial scam they didn't realize. So a lot of times we see people who have wandered into the library, maybe because it's air conditioned and they need someplace cool to sit for a while, but we're able to help them. And I wanted to mention that we've really tried to become an integral part of the West Baltimore community. Maryland Legal Aid was a partner with a group called Souls for Souls, and through some generous donations of coats and shoes from Macy's and Stride Ride, we were able to have a Spreading the Warmth event when it was cold outside. And what we did was we went back to this community to have this event right where our lawyers in the library are, at a community center 2 blocks down the street. And we partnered with the Baltimore City Police Department, and we had the police officers help bring sports equipment, shoes, coats, and fit them to children's feet for the winter. And it's a pretty remarkable sight, coming from where Baltimore came from 12 months before that, and where we're going in the future. And just a branch library in the community allows you to set that up, to set that network up, where Maryland Legal Aid becomes a really connected part of that community. And it allows for future community lawyering. I wrote in my article, this is a fresh approach. It's not that we're not sitting and listening anymore. We're just doing it a little differently. And now that we're become such a trusted member of the community, if there's a public housing complex that's causing a problem, we're going to hear about it. And we're going to be invited to those community association meetings to listen. And I think the branch library, going back to the question, is a really big part of it.
I'm glad to hear you talk about the community lawyering piece, Amy. I know that's something we've had some conversation about, because at first when I thought of community lawyering, but this is just a brief service, that's sort of the opposite of what you think of community lawyering, which is a long-term relationship to get at bigger systemic problems in a community. But what you're explaining is that you're using this to become that, right?
Exactly. My understanding is that legal aid started nationally a long time ago having small offices, especially in cities, in really impoverished communities. And as economies changed, and as it became more practical to have centralized locations, people became more centralized and maybe closed some of those smaller offices and came. So it was more economical to have everything in one place for each location's legal aid. However, because of technology, what we've discovered is we can have that centralized location in downtown Baltimore, but we can still serve other communities throughout the state by packing up our red cart with this mobile office and bringing our people right back to the communities where they were 40 years ago in different cities. And then once we're there, we can listen and we can hear, we've had 5 tenants come in with the exact same thing, or 21 people in the last month have brought in the same financial scam. Should they have a meeting about it? Do they want us to come and listen? Do they want us to see what the neighborhood is asking for in that area? So it's the same community lawyering that's always happened. It's just a different approach and a different way to get there. And with the climate today in communities such as West Baltimore, building trust is sometimes difficult. And this has been a great mechanism for us to do so.
Well, we have several legal aid attorneys and, some librarians who are watching today. I know many of them are interested in whether they could replicate something like this in their own communities. If someone were going to try to do this, if a program were going to try to do it, what would they need to do to get started?
I think the most important thing is to find a library that you can partner with in your community. We're pretty excited at Maryland Legal Aid about the opportunity to bring this to other parts of Baltimore and other parts of the state. We have some parts up in the north part of Maryland, up in a city called Hagerstown, where we're really looking to get into, also on the eastern shore as well. So if you're going to start a program out there on your own, absolutely meet with a librarian, someone who has a passion for serving their community, which has been my understanding many librarians do. When you think people go to libraries for books, they do, but they also have food programs, school free and reduced lunch programs for school students in the summertime often happen in libraries these days. They have cultural programs. And so find that in your community. Which one is the hub and how does it link up with a community of low-income clients that you'd really like to serve more in depth? Maybe one that doesn't have the public transportation to get to your legal aid office, and talk to that librarian, start that initial meeting. We're happy to talk to them ourselves and let them know how our program has gone, the successes we've had, any challenges we've had, and a suggestion, like a toolkit to get started.
Oh, that's great. So I'll remind everyone who registered for today's conversation for this hangout will get an email within the next couple of days. We'll have a link to this recording, a link to Amy's article, and Amy will include your contact information in that. So if people do want some more tips, they could reach out to you.
Okay.
And so you're talking about starting what you need to do with the library. One thing that struck me about what you said as far as the success of Maryland Legal Aid's program, you have buy-in from leadership. I mean, it sounds like it really came from the leadership. So that may be something that I could see that as being a potential barrier if just a frontline attorney said, I would like to do this. Do you have any tips on how they could basically sell it to those in charge to say this is something that we need to be doing?
The thing that sells it for me the most has been the client response, the gratitude from us being right down the street from them, from not having to take 3 buses and a day off work if they're lucky enough to have a job, for feeling like the lawyers have reached out to them. The client response has been so tremendous for legal aid, and the staff have enjoyed it so much. The growth in pro bono, every legal aid is always trying to get their PAI and to grow their pro bono program. This is an opportunity that pro bono attorneys love, and it's something that is appealing to funders as well. I mean, it's addressing an intense need in communities, especially in cities across America today. And all of that, I think, is a big sell if you're trying to approach your executive team. And I just want to note, you're correct. Absolutely. The idea came from our executive leadership, but we've had support from our entire organization, and I don't think it would have worked otherwise. From staff attorneys and paralegals that give up their time on Saturdays, from an IT team that and giving me different kinds of cords that connect to all kinds of things and make it work even better, even if you're in the back room of a library. I mean, the buy-in from your whole organization is, I think, what you really need for everybody saying, this is a project we really want to do because of what it could result in for the clients.
We had just a couple more questions that have come in. Melinda is in a library, and she's wondering if you all have federal grant funds, if it restricts the number of intake or the amount of time and resources that you can allocate to this. And she says that's something they've run into with some legal aid programs in California. They were restricted in how much time they could give. That doesn't sound, it sounds like you have some other funding sources you can use for
we
this.
do. We're very fortunate to have a number. We do have federal funds. We have other funding sources as well. So we're able to have that flexibility.
And we had a question who came in beforehand, also from someone in the library, from Lisa. She's in Rhode Island. And she says, we know we have some need for legal and social work help, but how we address that programmatically is more difficult. So this is coming from the library side. In other words, someone will come directly to me in the library for help because that person knows me, but they might not show up during a set time to talk to a stranger. Right now we have social work interns coming to different sites for 3 hours a week. They don't get used very much. We also have a direct referral line set up with the local legal clinic, and they'd be happy to come here if we could build the demand. She's wondering how from the library side they set it up so that it works for community members.
I would say that, when we first visited the library, it was sort of right after the unrest, and there was a program in the library that was being underutilized. And they were sitting in the same room we use, and not a lot of people were visiting them. And we didn't want our program to be that, because the library had seen a lot of in and out and coming in and not getting a lot of client interaction. And so the thing I would say we did differently is really integrate the library and the community into everything we did. For example, that shoe giveaway, we decided to have that in West Baltimore. We incorporated the police department. There's a Friends of the Library group with a wonderful leader named Frances Muldrow, and they're just a support group, not employees of the library system in Baltimore. And we've really become partners of them. They help speak about Maryland Legal Aid at all of their events. So becoming fully integrated, your name gets out there enough in the community, in churches, in places that are already places of worship, places that they trust, and you really become a part of it instead of just another program. And I totally agree to the librarian in Rhode Island. Miss Mulaney Townsend Diggs is the person that is trusted in that West Baltimore branch. I mean, absolutely. And so she would come to each of our sessions, and she would say, I guess she talked to a client who needed legal help. Come see me next Tuesday. I'll introduce you to my lawyers. So, I mean, she really made herself a part of the rollout of the project as well. And like I said, we put our staff member at the front of the library with the security guard. We sort of take over the whole library when we're in there, in that we're fully integrated into that community. And I think that makes a difference in how clients trust us, and we turn from strangers into a really trusted source of help.
That's a great note for us to end on. We've actually reached the end of our half hour. It always goes so quickly. Amy, I want to thank you for being with us today, especially when you're not even in your office in Baltimore. I also want to remind everyone that you can find Amy's article on the Clearinghouse Community, A Fresh Approach to Community Lawyering, a Lawyer in the Library. You can join the Shriver Center's mailing list at povertylaw.org/join. You can also follow the Shriver Center on LinkedIn. I want to invite everyone to join us for next month's Shriver Hangout. You may be aware that next month is the 20th anniversary of welfare reform. And so our Clearinghouse article next month is going to be a doozy. We have 13 reflections, short reflections from people who were involved at the time of welfare reform, and will be joining us to look back at that, where we've been the past 2 decades, and most importantly, where we go from here. So 4 of them will be joining us for the Hangout next month to talk about the past 2 decades since welfare reform and talk about ideas for improvements in what we have now. So there will be a link to register for that in the follow-up email for this, along with Amy's contact information if you're interested in talking to her more about the Lawyer in the Library program in Baltimore. So thanks again, Amy, for being with us.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you. And until next month, remember that you are not alone out there.